For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On September 24, 2002, Paulo Mendes, 31, disappeared while driving home from his construction job in Porto, Portugal. His abandoned car was found 3 days later in a remote parking area near the Douro River, but there was no sign of the father of two who had worked reliably at the same company for 6 years. Local police investigated the case amid concerns about increasing crime in the industrial district where he worked. For 7 years, Paulo's wife Teresa and their young children lived with unanswered questions while his disappearance remained an unsolved mystery in the Porto area. Then, in August 2009, Teresa made a disturbing discovery on social media that would finally provide answers about her husband's fate and expose a shocking truth that had been hidden for nearly a decade. This is the complete story of Paulo Mendes's disappearance and the extraordinary circumstances that led to resolution through an unexpected digital discovery. September 24, 2002, began as a typical Tuesday for Paulo Mendes, who had worked as a concrete mixer operator for Construco Silva for 6 years. The 31-year-old was known among his co-workers as reliable and hardworking, supporting his wife Teresa and their 2 children, 8-year-old Miguel and 5-year-old Sofia, in their modest apartment in Porto's Campania district. Paulo's job at the construction company required him to start work at 6 a.m., operating heavy machinery at various building sites throughout the Porto metropolitan area. That Tuesday, his crew was working on a residential development project in Vila Nova de Gaia, across the Douro River from Porto's historic center. His supervisor, Antonio Silva, later told investigators that Paulo had seemed normal during the workday, participating in conversations with co-workers and completing his assigned tasks without any indication of problems. The construction crew finished their shift at 4 p.m., and Paulo was seen leaving the job site in his 1995 Renault Clio around 4:15 p.m. Paulo's usual route home took him across the Dom Luís Bridge and through Porto's industrial areas before reaching his neighborhood. The drive typically took 25 to 30 minutes depending on traffic, and Teresa expected him home by 5 p.m. for dinner with the children. When Paulo hadn't arrived by 6 p.m., Teresa initially assumed he had stopped for groceries or encountered heavy traffic. However, as evening progressed without any contact, she became increasingly concerned. Paulo was punctual and always called if he would be delayed, habits developed during their 8 years of marriage. By 8 p.m., Teresa had called Paulo's cell phone numerous times without response. She contacted several of his co-workers, but none had seen him since he left the job site that afternoon. Growing panic led her to call her parents and Paulo's siblings to ask if they had heard from him, but no one had any information about his whereabouts. Teresa's first call to the Policia de Segurança Pública came at 9:30 p.m. The desk officer explained that adults weren't considered missing until 24 hours had passed, but agreed to take a preliminary report given Teresa's insistence that Paulo's absence was completely out of character. The initial police response was limited due to standard procedures requiring more time before launching formal investigations. However, Officer Carlos Pereira conducted a basic interview with Teresa that night, gathering information about Paulo's routine, work relationships, and any recent problems that might explain his disappearance. Teresa described her husband as a devoted family man with no history of drinking, gambling, or other behaviors that might lead to voluntary disappearance. Their marriage was stable, their finances were secure, and Paulo had shown no signs of depression or desire to leave his family. The following morning, September 25th, Teresa contacted Construco Silva directly to verify that Paulo had indeed finished work as scheduled. Supervisor Silva confirmed Paulo's departure time and noted that he had seemed entirely normal during his final hours at the job site. The formal missing person investigation began on September 26th when Paulo's 48-hour absence triggered standard police protocols. Detective Inspector João Carvalho was assigned to the case and immediately began gathering information about Paulo's last known movements and possible destinations. Initial investigations focused on Paulo's route home from the construction site. Detective Carvalho interviewed gas station attendants, shop owners, and other workers along the most likely paths Paulo would have taken, but no one remembered seeing him or his distinctive red Renault Clio on September 24th. The breakthrough came on September 27th when a jogger discovered Paulo's abandoned car in a remote parking area near the Douro River, approximately 15 kilometers from his usual route home. The location was a known spot for fishing and illegal dumping, rarely visited except by local residents and occasional recreational users. Detective Carvalho arrived at the scene to examine the vehicle, which showed no signs of accident damage or forced entry. The car doors were unlocked, keys were missing, and Paulo's work tools remained in the trunk along with his lunch container from that Tuesday. Most puzzling was the absence of his wallet and cell phone, which were not found in or around the vehicle. The car's position suggested it had been deliberately parked rather than abandoned in haste. It was properly positioned in a parking space with the handbrake engaged, indicating that whoever left it there had taken time to park carefully rather than fleeing from immediate danger. The investigation expanded to examine Paulo's personal and professional relationships for any indication of conflicts or threats that might explain his disappearance. Interviews with family members, co-workers, and neighbors revealed no enemies or suspicious circumstances in his life. Financial records showed no unusual transactions or withdrawals that might suggest Paulo had been planning to disappear voluntarily. His bank account contained normal activity through September 24th, with no large cash withdrawals or suspicious purchases in the days leading up to his disappearance. Detective Carvalho investigated the possibility of workplace accidents or conflicts that might have resulted in foul play. The construction industry in Portugal had experienced occasional violence related to labor disputes and illegal workers, but Paulo's company showed no evidence of such problems. The remote location where Paulo's car was found became a focus of intensive searching. Teams searched the surrounding area for any evidence of struggle, concealed gravesites, or other indicators of what might have happened after Paulo reached that location. The proximity to the Douro River raised concerns that his body might have been disposed of in the water. Divers from the Porto Fire Brigade searched accessible areas of the river near the parking area, but the strong current and muddy bottom made comprehensive searching extremely difficult. The river's flow toward the Atlantic Ocean meant that any evidence might have been carried far from the original location. As weeks passed without concrete evidence, the investigation began considering various theories about Paulo's fate. The missing wallet and cell phone suggested robbery, but the car's valuable contents were left untouched. The remote location implied that Paulo had either been forced to drive there or had gone voluntarily to meet someone. Family members provided crucial insights into Paulo's personality and habits. His brother Manuel emphasized that Paulo was completely devoted to his children and would never voluntarily abandon them. Teresa added that their marriage was happy and that Paulo had been looking forward to Miguel's upcoming birthday party. The case generated local media attention in Porto and surrounding areas, leading to several reported sightings of Paulo in various locations throughout northern Portugal. Detective Carvalho investigated the most promising leads, but none provided concrete evidence about Paulo's whereabouts or fate. Construction industry sources suggested that Paulo might have witnessed illegal activities at job sites and been eliminated to prevent him from reporting what he had seen. However, investigation of Construcos Silva and its clients revealed no evidence of criminal activity that might motivate such extreme measures. By the end of 2002, the active investigation had been scaled back, though the case remained officially open. Paulo's disappearance became one of hundreds of unsolved missing person cases in the Porto region, with periodic reviews but no breakthrough evidence. Throughout 2003 and 2004, Teresa struggled to maintain stability for her children while dealing with the uncertainty of not knowing her husband's fate. She took a job at a local textile factory to support the family, while her parents helped care for Miguel and Sofia during working hours. The children, particularly 8-year-old Miguel, had difficulty understanding why their father had disappeared. Teresa sought counseling support to help them process the loss while maintaining hope that Paulo might somehow return. The family's financial situation became challenging without Paulo's steady construction income. Detective Carvalho continued following up on periodic tips and reported sightings, but none provided concrete leads about Paulo's whereabouts. The case file gradually accumulated hundreds of pages of reports, interviews, and dead-end investigations without producing answers. In 2005, human remains found in a construction site near Porto initially raised hopes for resolution, but forensic analysis determined they belonged to someone who had died much earlier and were unrelated to Paulo's disappearance. Such discoveries occasionally renewed attention to the case but never provided the answers Teresa desperately sought. The rise of internet communication and early social media platforms during the mid-2000s provided new ways for Teresa to share information about Paulo's disappearance. She created web pages and joined online groups dedicated to missing persons, hoping that broader exposure might generate new leads. By 2007, 5 years after Paulo's disappearance, Teresa had largely accepted that her husband was probably dead, though she continued hoping for answers about what had happened. The children had adapted to life without their father, though both still asked occasional questions about when he might return. Teresa began exploring the possibility of having Paulo declared legally dead, a process that would require 7 years of absence and extensive documentation of search efforts. The legal procedure would provide financial benefits for the children and allow the family to achieve some form of closure. Advanced investigative techniques became available during the late 2000s, including improved DNA analysis and database searches that could identify human remains more quickly. However, without physical evidence or credible leads, these technologies couldn't provide insights into Paulo's case. Social media platforms like Facebook began gaining popularity in Portugal around 2008, providing new opportunities for sharing information about missing persons. Teresa created profiles dedicated to finding Paulo, sharing his photographs and story with expanding networks of users who might have relevant information. August 12, 2009, began as an ordinary day for Teresa, who had developed routines that helped her cope with single parenthood while maintaining hope for answers about Paulo's fate. Now 7 years after his disappearance, she had learned to balance grief with the practical demands of supporting her teenage children. That evening, while browsing Instagram on her recently acquired smartphone, Teresa was looking through posts tagged with Porto locations, hoping to see anything that might relate to missing persons cases or provide leads about Paulo's disappearance. Social media had become her primary tool for keeping his case visible to the public. Around 9:15 p.m., Teresa encountered a post that made her freeze in shock. A user named @Porto_memories had shared what appeared to be a vintage photograph with the caption, "Found this old construction crew photo from 2002. Anyone recognize these guys?" The black and white image showed several men in work clothes standing near construction equipment. In the center of the photograph, Teresa immediately recognized Paulo's distinctive smile and the work uniform he had worn at Construcos Silva. The image appeared to have been taken at a job site, showing Paulo and several co-workers during what looked like a lunch break or end-of-shift gathering. What made the discovery chilling was not just seeing Paulo's image after 7 years, but the timestamp visible in the photograph's corner showing September 24, 2002, the exact date of his disappearance. The photo appeared to have been taken hours or even minutes before Paulo vanished, providing the last known image of him alive. Teresa immediately contacted the Instagram user who had posted the photograph, explaining her connection to one of the men in the image and requesting any additional information about where and when the photo had been taken. The response would lead to discoveries that finally explained what had happened to Paulo. The Instagram user, identified as Carlos Montero, explained that he had found the photograph among belongings inherited from his deceased uncle, who had worked in Porto's construction industry during the early 2000s. Montero had been digitizing old family photos and sharing them online to help identify people and preserve memories. More significantly, Montero's uncle had left detailed notes about the photograph, including information about the specific job site and the circumstances under which it was taken. According to these notes, the photo had been taken at the end of what would prove to be Paulo's final workday, showing him with co-workers who had invited him for drinks after finishing their shift. The notes revealed that Paulo had initially declined the invitation, saying he needed to get home to his family. However, the co-workers had convinced him to join them for just one drink at a bar near the construction site, promising he would be home only slightly later than usual. This information provided the missing link in Paulo's timeline that investigators had never been able to establish. Rather than driving directly home as everyone had assumed, Paulo had actually gone to socialize with co-workers, a deviation from his normal routine that explained why he never reached home. Montero's uncle's notes included the name of the bar where the group had planned to gather, O Pescador, a small establishment near the Douro River that catered to construction workers and dock employees. The bar's location was significant because it was near the area where Paulo's car had been found abandoned. Armed with this new information, Teresa contacted Detective Carvalho, who was still assigned to Paulo's case despite the passage of 7 years. The detective immediately recognized the significance of the Instagram discovery and began investigating the bar and its connection to Paulo's disappearance. Investigation of O Pescador revealed that the establishment had closed in 2004, 2 years after Paulo's disappearance. However, records from the bar's operation and interviews with former employees provided crucial insights into what had happened on September 24, 2002. Former bartender Rosa Santos remembered the night clearly because it had ended with a violent altercation that required police intervention. According to Santos, Paulo and his co-workers had been drinking when a dispute erupted with other patrons over a football match discussion that escalated into personal insults and threats. The altercation had involved members of a local gang known for intimidating construction workers and demanding protection payments from businesses in the area. Paulo, unaware of the local politics, had defended his co-workers when the gang members became aggressive, ultimately provoking a confrontation that continued outside the bar. Witnesses interviewed in 2009 recalled seeing Paulo and several other men involved in a heated argument in the parking area behind O Pescador around 7 p.m. on September 24, 2002. The argument had escalated to physical violence, with Paulo reportedly defending himself against multiple attackers before the situation moved toward the nearby river area. The investigation revealed that Paulo had been killed during the altercation and his body disposed of in the Douro River to conceal the crime. His car had been moved to the remote parking area to mislead investigators about his final location and create the impression that he had disappeared voluntarily or been abducted elsewhere. Detective Carvalho's renewed investigation identified 3 men involved in the fatal altercation, 2 of whom were still alive and living in the Porto area. Confronted with witness testimony and evidence from the Instagram discovery, both men eventually confessed to their involvement in Paulo's death. According to their confessions, the confrontation had not been premeditated murder but had escalated beyond their intentions when Paulo fought back more effectively than expected. Panic about killing someone had led them to dispose of his body and vehicle in ways designed to prevent discovery and prosecution. The gang members revealed the approximate location where Paulo's body had been thrown into the river, though 7 years of current and sediment made recovery unlikely. Their confessions provided closure about Paulo's fate while confirming that his death had been the result of random violence rather than any problems in his personal life. Teresa finally had the answers she had sought for 7 years, learning that Paulo had died defending his co-workers and his own honor against criminal intimidation. While devastating to understand the circumstances of his death, the knowledge allowed her and the children to properly grieve and move forward with their lives. The resolution of Paulo's case through social media discovery highlighted how digital platforms could provide unexpected breakthroughs in cold cases. The Instagram post had preserved crucial evidence that traditional investigations had never uncovered, demonstrating the potential of crowdsourced information in solving crimes. The perpetrators were prosecuted for homicide and received significant prison sentences, though the 7-year delay meant that some evidence and witnesses were no longer available. The case became a reference point for Portuguese police about the importance of investigating social gathering places and nightlife establishments during missing person investigations. Teresa's persistence in maintaining Paulo's case visibility through social media had directly contributed to the breakthrough that solved his disappearance. Her advocacy demonstrated how families could use digital platforms effectively to keep cold cases active and potentially discover new evidence. The case prompted improvements in Portuguese police procedures for investigating missing persons, particularly regarding the importance of thoroughly documenting victims' final hours and potential deviations from normal routines. Better coordination with local businesses and witness interviews became standard practice. Paulo's story serves as both a tragedy and a reminder of how random violence can destroy families while highlighting the power of persistence and modern technology in seeking justice. His death resulted from defending himself and others against criminal intimidation, reflecting his character as a devoted family man who stood up for what was right. The Instagram discovery that solved the case became a celebrated example of how social media could serve justice and provide closure to grieving families. Teresa's 7-year search for answers ultimately succeeded through an unexpected digital encounter that preserved the truth about Paulo's final day. As of 2009, Teresa and her children were finally able to hold memorial services for Paulo and begin processing their grief with knowledge of what had actually happened. While they could never recover the years of uncertainty and pain, they had the closure that allowed them to honor Paulo's memory and move forward with their lives.